Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello, it is Kim Howerton with Keto Life Support. This is episode number 208, and this is an update on my fat loss. So back in December, I started giving you guys updates on my fat loss phase. And so as I am recording this, it's now been about 4.5, 5 months. And I am going to tell you where we're at. The past month, I've been on what some might call a plateau, but it's been a little bit self-imposed. Let me explain. So the first 3 months went pretty speedily on my fat loss phase, losing 10 pounds, went well, things were good. Started losing at a slower rate after that, which is pretty understandable why that would happen. Then I had kind of a month where it was like a little bit up and down, which I would call more of I wouldn't call it a stall, but a little more of an extreme slowdown. And then I knew I had some travel coming up. So I decided to go to maintenance for that week, which actually ended up stretching into 2 weeks. So I had a 2-week maintenance period in there and then came back home. I've been home now around 2 weeks since then, and the scale has started to go down again. So basically, there's been a little more back and forth and lifing in the past 2 months or so, 6 weeks. So I haven't seen the scale move a lot, which can really make you get in your head. When I go back and I look about the whys and the whats, there are certainly a lot of reasons, a lot of actions, a lot of non-actions, right, that would make it make sense. But there are certainly days where I am frustrated or feeling negative, having thoughts like, gosh, maybe my luck has run out. When you're a long-term weight struggler, I think we have a very weird relationship with hope and belief. And so there are these times when things are going really great and you start to kind of almost catch, sort of like the momentum of it. And you're like, oh, it's like these are the times you want to make charts where you're like, and another pound and down. It's like a little, just like a little step down chart. And you get a little bit blind to the fact that it's not always going to be that way, or you start ignoring that fact. And then you hit a little bit more of a rough patch. And when I say you, I mean me, and it tests you. I wanted to record this episode, not just because I think people desperately need to know what's going on with me. I don't think most of you care or really care that much. I use it to illuminate certain things. So hopefully this is illuminating this place where I find many of my clients, which is when things start to not go quickly. So many of my clients come to me and they're like, oh, I'm not losing very fast. And then they tell me like a rate of loss where I'm like, no, that is fast. That is fast. And we have these expectations. And so, me coming into a period where it's now kind of stretching out, partially because I chose to go to maintenance for a little while with a longer period of time without significant weight loss, means that I'm really working some of my mental muscles more than I was when it was going speedily. And this is similar to the initial part of my journey when I was keto and the weight loss was going really fast. It was going really well. And then I stayed keto and then the weight loss stopped. And then what was I doing? And started to doubt things, right? And I had to relearn a bunch of things, or actually just learn for the first time about a bunch of things about the way the body works. And coming into the past several weeks, I don't see, time is weird when I look back at it, but this sort of what we could call the more flat period in my weight loss journey Where now I've got, really another 10 pounds. I'd like to see the scale come down, maybe 8 to 10. I don't know. So it's not very much, but it's gotten more challenging from many, many directions. The first of which is the weight loss slowed, which is challenging mentally, which makes me feel sort of less hopeful, which makes me feel less agency. It makes me feel less effective. I'm like, I'm doing the things and the things aren't happening, right? And that can be really demoralizing. And so that's going on one aspect. The other aspect is very physical, which is the less you weigh, the harder weight loss becomes, especially when you've been working at it a long time. Because given the amount of weight loss I've experienced over my whole journey and even my recent journey of fat loss from losing over 100 pounds and now working on the last 10ish, my metabolic rate is lower than the average bear, just because of the things my body has gone through, which makes it a little more challenging, which can make it a little more frustrating. The less I weigh, the harder the weight loss gets, often is the case for really anyone with a body. And so, that's got to get factored into my expectations. So it's one thing to set expectations. It's another thing to believe them, right? When you're like, all right, I can lose a half a pound a week during this period, but during this period, maybe I'm only going to lose a quarter pound a week. And gosh, quarter pound at a time can really get disguised in the fluctuations. And so that's what I want to sum up with here in my discussion is when you're working on a pretty slow rate of loss, because slow is pretty much the option available to you, it's just the reality of it that when you are losing at a slower pace, week to week, the scale might cover it up, right? Because we have water weight fluctuations based on your cycle, your eating, your sodium intake, your water intake, how much you're going to the bathroom, how much you're exercising. All these things can make the scale go up a couple of percent. You might fluctuate between 1 and 3 pounds on the regular. And if the bigger you are, the more that might be. But especially when you're looking at progress would look like a quarter pound of fat loss in a week, which is progress for sure. But you've got a 1, 2, or even 3 pound fluctuation from day to day or week to week in your water weight. Gosh, you could go weeks without having any real confirmation of the scale going down. Now, right, let's say you have that 3 pound fluctuation, you're losing a quarter pound. I mean, 3 is a little extreme for me, but up to 2 pounds is pretty normal. So you've got quarter pound a week in a month, that's maybe 2 pounds. So it might take a month of loss being disguised by that sloshy slosh of the up and down of the water weight. One day you might be like, oh, I lost a pound. The next day it's back. Oh, I lost another pound. Oh, no, it's back. Right. And you're like, I don't know. I can't make heads or tails. Maybe. And then you're like, I gained it, but now I'm a pound more than when I started the month. And that's just the water weight of it all. And so I'm in that period where I have to stay like super resolute, stick to my guns, because my lying eyes will deceive me. The scale will deceive me. The scale will tell me these lies. It will tell me, why bother? My scale is very talkative. Why bother? Why even try? Nothing you're doing is working. Your luck ran out. You're just broken, right? Like all those scripts are waiting in the wings to come back in, and you have to stay true to course. And so that's where I'm at. I'm in that, like, gotta stay true to course place, because there's not much feedback that things are going in the right direction. So I'm being uber super careful with my tracking, making sure I'm staying as active as I normally am, if not a little bit more, and going through this to really evaluate if I need to make a change. Do I need to bring my food intake down a little bit again? Do I need to make some alterations in my menu choices? And so that's what I'm now really carefully evaluating and being really spot on in tracking and paying attention to things. So that makes me feel more confident because I have something to monitor. Whereas, back in the day when it all felt like magic, it could be very frustrating when nothing seemed to be happening, nothing seemed to be going right. And I didn't necessarily have a way to check if something needed to change that much. Now I can stay the course and know that I'll be coming out the other side. So my hope is that by next check-in, I have some great news that I've lost a little bit more weight on my journey. And I know that that will happen, whether that's next check-in or the check-in after. I trust the process. And I also trust that the process has some ups and downs that may not mean it goes exactly the way I would choose if I could choose, but I can't. So I got to just stay the course, because the place where you choose to jump off the ship because it's going a little too slow, or you're not sure it's going in the right direction, or you don't know what's happening, you can't see land anymore, you're out at sea and you get scared, and that's how you drown. So, you got to stay with it. You got to stay on course, and you've got to trust that eventually you'll get to your destination, as long as you're taking the right steps and making the right decision. Don't trust a sinking ship. Obviously, if you've made wrong decisions, you might have to abandon it, but you need to first evaluate what your safest course forward is. How's that for carrying an analogy too long? All right, guys. Hopefully that was informative for some of you. You might maybe resonate with some of the things I was talking about, and I will talk to you again next week.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.